Today on Platts Energy Week, the map for U.S. natural gas pipelines is changing and it's costly. Then EPA under assault plugs on with new regulations. But first, Senator Shaheen talks about a bipartisan bill to save energy. You're watching Platts Energy Week, your independent source for energy news.
Welcome to Platts Energy Week. I'm Bill Loveless. Commercial and residential buildings consume 40% of the energy used in the United States. So it's no wonder that saving energy is considered a leading solution to meeting energy needs. One of the biggest advocates of that is New Hampshire Senator Shaheen. The Democrat co-chairs the Alliance to Save Energy, and she's joined Ohio Republican Senator Rob Portman on legislation seeking a national energy efficiency strategy. We spoke on Capitol Hill the other day. Senator, energy conservation laws have been on the books for 40 years or more. What would your bill do that would be different?
Well, we think it updates some of those laws in a way that's very important. It includes a section on voluntary building codes, because we know that buildings are about 40% of our energy use, and some incentives to try and help states encourage them to adopt those building codes. There's a section on appliance standards, something that the manufacturers have supported and agreed to because it's in their interest to make sure that we have some standardized standards, so to speak.
Now, the standards have been around for years.
They have, and this is an upgrade on those standards, and it includes not just home appliances, as people would expect, but things like HVAC systems and lighting systems.
Heating and air conditioning.
Right.
So this would be in addition to the standards that have been set on other appliances.
Right. I think it really upgrades those, because as the technology has changed, we've gotten more ability to be more energy efficient with our appliances. And then there are provisions that deal with manufacturing to help manufacturers improve their use of energy, and to help a loan program that helps with the cost of some of these retrofits. Because one of the biggest challenges that companies have is getting the money to do retrofits to make them more energy efficient, because we don't right now have a real good system for appraising the improvements and the cost benefits of those kinds of changes.
Now, the bill is one of several measures that the Senate Energy Committee expects to take up this week in a markup. It's expected to pass easily, as I understand it. Maybe not.
Well, we're working hard. We hope it's going to be taken up this week, and we hope that we're going to be able to get the votes on the committee. Senator Portman, who's the co-sponsor with me,
Republican from Ohio.
Republican from Ohio, so we're glad it's got bipartisan support.
It's rare these days.
It is, and so we're working hard to build support among other members of the committee on both sides of the aisle.
Do you think it can pass the Senate and the House, though?
Well, I'm staying focused on what we have to do at each stage of the game. I'm hoping that we're going to get a good vote out of committee, and then it will go to the floor. I spoke to Chairman Bingaman today, actually, about how the bill is going, and the hope to get some of the provisions that are in the Energy Committee now that there's been agreement on to the floor, so we can get a vote on them in the Senate, hopefully sometime this summer.
So you're hopeful but not sure on passage?
You know, I think there's not, we don't yet have a timetable for doing that, and there hasn't been agreement on what's going to be brought to the floor. You know, the Senate does everything by unanimous consent, so
right.
Everybody has to agree in order to move things. But I'm hopeful that because of the bipartisan support that we have, that we'll be able to get this to the floor and get a strong vote out of the Senate.
Yeah, and the House this week may vote on a bill that would rescind a 2007 piece of legislation that phases out the incandescent light bulb. And that's because some people are just concerned with the government setting new standards or requirements of this sort. Could your bill run into trouble in the House because of the new standards it would set?
Well, maybe, but I think that we have a good argument to make that energy efficiency is, first, it's the cheapest, fastest way to address our energy needs, and there's huge cost benefits for not too much public money. It leverages private sector dollars in a way that provides tremendous savings to the private sector, to industry, and that's important as we're looking at how we can create jobs. Clearly, this is one area that there are some real opportunities. I visited a company in New Hampshire called Velcro USA, and as you might expect, it makes Velcro for a lot of military uniforms, in fact. And one of the things that has kept them competitive has been their ability to put in a combined heat and power system in their facility. And without that, it's unlikely that they would have been able to stay competitive and been able to continue to provide jobs and actually hire people, which they're looking at doing.
There was one other, when your bill was being considered at a hearing not long ago, the National Association of Home Builders raised some questions about the bill. They worried that it could increase the cost of home building, particularly with the housing market in the bad shape it's been in. It could increase the cost because of new standards, new codes that the government would become involved in, or even net zero buildings that is set as a goal. Is there that potential, you think, to scare off home construction?
Well, listen, I'm very concerned that we get our construction industry and home building industry back on its feet. That's important to all of us here in Congress. So we don't want to do anything that we think is going to be an issue for them. That's why these codes are voluntary. They're not mandatory. Why we have incentives to help, and why we've worked closely with home builders to address a number of their concerns. So I'm hopeful that they will see this to their benefit in the future, because one of the things that we're seeing as I talk to people in New Hampshire is more and more consumers who recognize how important energy efficiency is, because it saves them money.
But sometimes it costs money, though. I mean, there's an upfront.
It costs some money up front, but if you look at the
some
payback,
people can't afford to wait.
The payback dollars. I visited a company in New Hampshire that has one of 2 platinum LEED certified buildings in the state, and their payback on their investment was 2 years. So this is something that
affordable.
Consumers, when they know the numbers, then it's to their benefit, and they understand why it's helpful. Senator,
I have about 30 seconds. I'm curious about the clean energy standard. President Obama has called for it for electricity production, 80% from clean sources by 2035. Chairman Bingaman is not sure this can happen. What do you think?
Well, there is an agreement yet in the Energy Committee.
There's not an agreement.
There's not yet. I'm hopeful that we can come to some agreement. I think this is important as we think about how we reduce carbon in our energy.
Thank you very much, Senator
Great
Jean
to be
Shaheen.
with you.
Thank you. Coming up next, we'll discuss why a new report says the natural gas industry needs $205 billion in new infrastructure.
Platts Energy Week is brought to you by Deloitte, an inexhaustible resource for oil and gas.